You're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm one of your hosts, Rachel, and I am one of the author engagement managers for Kobo Writing Life. On today's episode, Tara and I got to speak with debut author Eliana Ramage. Eliana holds an MFA in fiction from the Iowa Writers Workshop and has received residencies and fellowships from the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center, Lambda Literary, Tin House, and Vermont Studio Center. A citizen of the Cherokee Nation, she lives in Nashville with her family. To the Moon and Back is her first novel. It's always so great to get to chat with debut authors about their first book. Eliana told us about how this novel came to be and about the evolution of To the Moon and Back from a short story to a completed novel. She gave us a behind-the-scenes look at the collaborative process that brought this book to life. She gave us some great insight into how she balanced the many threads throughout the novel, which included color coding, much to my delight. And she told us what it's been like since her novel was chosen as a Reese's book club pick, which is very exciting. It was a great conversation with a lot of really cool craft tidbits throughout, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Eliana, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
So can you tell listeners a little bit about yourself? Have you always been a writer?
Oh, okay. Yes, in different ways. I wrote a lot of like those little books, you know, when you're a kid and you like draw the pictures and then you write it and it's on like printer paper and you staple it together. So I did that. And then I spent all of middle school, high school writing personal narratives and being really, really scared of writing anything that hadn't already happened. Like fiction was terrifying. And then in freshman year of college, I wanted to study creative writing, but you can't do that in most creative writing majors without taking like an introduction to creative writing class where they make you do all of the genres. So I started fiction through this assignment that I really didn't want to do, that I was really scared of when I was in freshman year of college. And then, you know, I just stuck with that all the way through. I'm 34 now. So 18 to 34 has been the fiction era of my life so far.
That's so cool. Was there any, like you said, you had to try a bunch of different genres. Was there anything that jumped out or made you think like, actually, this is like fun?
I still love creative nonfiction. Poetry, I would not write. It was very, very, very hard. And I think through that class, I appreciated it more. And I still love, I read it now when I didn't read it before college much, but that feels like a whole nother language to me.
And I'm curious because you said you got your major in creative writing. You also have an MFA in fiction. You've done a couple of residencies and fellowships. I imagine your writing process from creating documents and printing them out on your childhood computer to now has evolved slightly. So I'm curious kind of what you learned throughout your writing education that kind of has led to how you write your novels now.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's like years of things I've learned. But I think the most important one, the most important thing I've learned, if I had to just narrow it down, is more of an attitude shift. That, like, caveat, workshop not for everyone, talking for myself. When I had my first fiction workshop when I was 18, I was really, really scared. I brought my computer and wrote down like every word anyone said. And I remember my hands were shaking through that whole like 40 minutes, and anything anyone said about like not, if there was anything they thought could be like improved upon, then it was like, I could be improved upon, like I am bad. So I went into it, you know, with the wrong understanding of what fiction, when it's done well, is for. And then I just kept having to do it because the way the school and the program was set up was workshop. And I was lucky to have teachers who were really like careful about how they did it and made it the kind of environment where almost all of my workshop experiences have been very good ones. That meant that every time I did it, you know, my like hands shook a little bit less, and I like listened a little bit more deeply, and I was able to like separate the work from myself, and I learned so much from what people were telling me and what I was telling other people from reading their work. So now I think of myself as very, very, very much a collaborative writer. The best art experience of my life has been editing this novel with the help of my agent and my editors. I would always choose collaboration over doing it alone. And part of that is that I love prescriptive advice. You don't have to take it. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with what you want to do. You can hear a bad idea, or I can hear a bad idea and think like, oh, like glad to have heard that. No, thanks. So it's really shifted me from like age 18, like anything I do, I have to be very like protective of and precious about, to now, like the more the merrier. I will hear any idea and then just like take it or not take it.
And I'm curious about the collaborative process, because looking at the acknowledgements of your novel, you had editorial teams in the UK, the US, and in Canada.
Yes.
So I'm curious how that process works when you are working with so many different voices, and how do you make sure that you're sticking with your own intention with the novel?
By the time I had all of that help, like that most intensive version of help, I'd already been with this work for many, many years. So I think in terms of I think what the phrase you used, I think it was like protecting your intention or holding on to your intention. That was something that I'd been working through for a long time. So by the time I queried an agent, I had an understanding of what the heart of the book was. And because of the kind of writer I am, I felt very, very open-minded about how can I take that heart of the book and express it in different ways, or shift it, revise it. So that's how I feel about the intention. And then just like the nitty gritty of how the editing process works. When I found representation with my agent, so Meredith Kaffel-Simonoff, she's really, really, really smart. And the book held a lot of things, but I don't think it was as organized as it could be, or it could have been. Sorry, I don't think it was as organized as it could have been to sort of help all of those elements come through in a way that felt cohesive. So Meredith worked on the book with me for a year, and she introduced a lot of organizational principles kind of from the outside in, where I would take those ideas, and then they ended up being completely different through a year's worth of drafts. But I think artistically, that's something huge that she contributed. Then it sold first to the US editor, Margot Schickmanter, and very shortly after to the UK editor, Bobby Mostyn Owen. I know that books are acquired at different times and different ways, but with this one, I was lucky to have two editors who work really well together, and they agreed on, what was going to happen with the book. And most importantly, they acquired it at the same time. So they were able to work with the edits. They were able to work on the edits with me together. So we would get on a Zoom, all three of us. There would be line edits in the document that came from both of them. They were really on the same page for those 2 years. The Canadian editor, Katharina Vermette, she joined on, I think, a year and a half into the process. So the edits were already complete at that time. And so that means that she's like very much a champion of the book. She's very much one of the book's editors. But how deep you get into the line note process, I think, has everything to do with like, when did it become an American and British book versus when did it become a Canadian book?
So interesting to learn about the ins and outs of the process, like three editors in three different regions as well. It sounds like a lot to handle, but you had
it was
to make the book the best, right?
Absolutely. The best part of the process was like adding these people who have changed it, because even with Katharina not being like in the document, making like, taking out this word and putting in that word, like she's a champion for getting this book into Canadian hands, for thinking about how the book will be received and like where it sort of fits in a Canadian landscape. And then there's a German editor where that translation process like hasn't even started. So that when that happens, it'll be something that it'll be like the introduction of a different editor 2 years after all of that, those like first edits began. So I don't even know how to speak to that yet.
You'll learn about that. Yeah. So the book we're referring to is To the Moon and Back, which is your debut novel. And it is a hefty book for a debut. So can you tell listeners just a little bit about the storyline, about the book itself?
Yes, it is a coming of age novel about a young queer woman who is obsessed with becoming the first Cherokee astronaut. I think for her, it's an ambition novel. But for me, and I think for readers, it's a book about mothers and daughters. It's about sisters. It's about love and how our connections to the people we care about on Earth, how do they fit in to these like really, really strong desires we have about a mark we want to make in the world.
Like Tara mentioned, it is a big novel. There is a lot of characters. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of depth. What inspired you to take on such an epic story for your debut novel?
It's a great question. When I first started writing this, it came from this moment where I knew I was going to write about one character. I knew it was going to be about a Cherokee astronaut, but I don't think I ever got more than a page or two into that without knowing that she was, like all of us, connected to people. Her mother showed up, her sister showed up, her girlfriend showed up. I came to really, really love those characters. Sometimes they can be easier to love than our main character, our aspiring astronaut. And so I think that the theme of the book of belonging and of how we belong to one another, that really came to the forefront before I even had a chance to totally understand our main character on her own, because she has never been on her own.
There's a lot of real history intertwined with like the fictional narrative of this book. So I was wondering if you could talk about the process of writing that, and was it the real moments that inspired the story? And is there any pressure with representing like historical stories within a fictional novel?
Absolutely. I feel the pressure to do that well when I'm writing about history, when I'm writing about science. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a historian, but that's in all fiction. I think we all, as writers and as people, we get interested in these things. And if it's something that your character cares about, that you care about, then of course you have to understand it as best you can. That's where, again, collaboration became so much a part of the story of this book. For specifically the history parts, my younger brother is a Cherokee historian, which is crazy to me that we would both come from like the same personal family history, from the same parents, from the same Cherokee heritage. And we would take those early understandings of our identity. And once we became adults, I think our sort of two coming of age journeys have taken that foundation into different directions. For me, I didn't initially want to write about history in this book because I felt like, for many reasons, I felt like Cherokee stories are often so grounded in the past. I felt like that past was important, but it felt a little bit limiting to me. And I wanted, this is fiction. This is my opportunity to just imagine what comes next. And that was really freeing for me. But having a brother working on a dissertation about everything that had happened in the past at the same time as I was writing a novel that looked toward the future meant that I couldn't not hear from him all these pieces to what it is to be Cherokee that I had been missing, that aren't discussed, at the family table. They're not discussed in like school history curriculums when you're a kid. So I needed someone to be close to me and care about history just as much as I cared about these characters and their fictional lives, to inspire me to actually do that research with his help, to have those conversations with him, with someone who's an expert, and to understand, okay, if the history is more complex than I understood, if there's more here than these characters know, then what do these characters need to know, and how would that organically influence their stories and what decisions they make going forward?
I think the way that you wrote it was really great, where it's kind of sprinkled in as the characters are learning it. Like you said, It doesn't, I'm sure it can, like, the pressure to have like a historically accurate representation that the untold history, that's not what this feels like. This is like, it's part of their story. And then also you're sort of giving your references afterwards as well for like readers to like go and learn more if they want to too. So it's just part of the story. It's not like you're like this historical education that's going on. It's like a novel. Like.
Well, and kind of to Tara's point with the references in the back, you also include where you took fictional liberties with not necessarily the like accuracy of the history, but how it impacted these characters and where these characters fit into real life events. And I'm curious if you have any advice for other authors who want to write fiction within real history and how you figured out where to take those liberties and where to insert the fiction into real life.
Great question. Because I know for sure my answer with this book, because it felt like something that I wouldn't have had a blanket answer for in terms of advice. It felt like something that I wouldn't have had an answer for when I first started writing it, but it was kind of like as the story progressed for these characters, one decision at a time, it felt really clear to me where it should be totally true and where I should take liberties based off of what felt ethical. And I'm sure that would also feel clear to other writers just once you actually know what scenario you're talking about. So just to give a couple examples, if we're talking about the Trail of Tears, anytime we're talking about like real people dying, then I don't want to change what really happened. I wanted to sort of honor those people and what actually happened to them as accurately as I can. And then when it comes to things that are ongoing today or things that aren't my story to tell, that's when I think fiction was really helpful. So in this book, we have a protest encampment that is inspired by what we saw at Standing Rock in terms of like pan-Indian, like many people, Indigenous people from all over the world, like coming and uniting around an issue to protect native land. Inspired by that, that was a real place, a real protest that I went to and I was so moved by, and I wanted to kind of stay in that place and think more about it. But I feel like the pressure, since that's not my protest, I feel like the pressure to write about that kind of as an expert and in a way that would have people, I don't know, making mistakes that like maybe in real life they made, maybe in real life they didn't make because I'm making this up. Like that was kind of a line that I didn't want to cross. I wanted to be able to have a fictional protest where I could really admire these people. I could hopefully help the reader to respect these people. And, you know, they're fictional. Like we have opportunities to make fun of them. We have opportunities to like, you know, see where they're meeting their goals and where they're falling short. I wanted to introduce the complicated questions that happen in real protests and in real life without pointing fingers at like, oh, in this actual protest in like the year, whatever protest I'm taking, this person did the right thing. This person did the wrong thing. It just becomes much less interesting when I'm acting as like a judge over like political decisions than when I'm taking characters who feel real to me and saying, in these circumstances, how would Steph respond and how would her sister Kayla respond?
No, I think it was done very effectively.
Thank you. And then, of course, my biggest advice is that I really I really appreciated having the end notes in the book, because if you're going to write a book about the first Native American woman astronaut, then like it's nice to have a place in the book to say, actually, that's already happened. Her name is Nicole Mann. Like, go read about her.
I love that piece. I did exactly that afterwards finishing the book. I was like, oh, okay, great. No, the inclusion was super. Yeah, I liked that piece. And we've talked a lot about how your characters are Indigenous and like that's a theme throughout your book. So I wonder if you could talk a little about the importance of like Indigenous representation in storytelling.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel very grateful to be living when in the current moment as a reader and a writer of Indigenous literature. It just feels so different from when I was growing up, and I'm only 34. So as a kid, we didn't have Indigenous children's books, and I remember reading Louise Erdrich when I was 16, and having that be such a pivotal moment for myself as a reader and a writer, because it was my first time being aware. I was standing in the bookstore, and I was like, my first time being aware that I was reading a book that had been written by a Native author, and it was my first time because I think of the timing of how long I'd been reading and where I was like in my development as a reader and writer. It was my first time being aware of turning the last page of this book, it was The Painted Drum. Turning the last page, I thought, this is artful. Like, this is what it is to make art. And it really changed how I understood writing. I stopped reading just for plot and started reading for something deeper that I hadn't totally been ready for, hadn't totally been aware was there. And then it changed everything. I think the first book I read after that was Running in the Family by Michael Ondaatje. And I was like, like lots of people are doing literary fiction, are writing these beautiful books. So then I think my last representation story is not books, it's TV. Because in college, I think every piece of fiction I've ever written has been about Cherokee people, but Cherokee women actually. But I felt in college, like 18 to 21 or so, I felt this pressure of like, should I be writing a certain kind of Cherokee story? Should I be writing traditional stories, like maybe modernized or included or woven in or something? And like nothing at all against doing that. But those weren't the questions I was interested in. I thought I needed to be writing that because I felt like some kind of outside pressure of like, I need to represent in a specific way. Then in 2014, the TV show Mohawk Girls came out from Canada. So thanks, Canada. It was billed as the Mohawk Sex and the City. And it really is that, like, it's just as silly, just as like, a group of women who are like sleeping with the wrong people and like terrorizing their friendships. Like, it's just fun. And being able to watch a show at that like pivotal time in my development where I felt like they were interested in they were navigating the same world I was navigating. They were interested in the same questions. Like, it felt so close to contemporary Indigenous life that it really felt like permission to follow what I was interested in as a writer, even if it like tonally came out different from Mohawk Girls. It was more about that moment of permission.
I love that. And can I just shout out my favorite musician right now, my favorite album that was released this year, Ken Pomeroy. She's Cherokee and just like the most beautiful, heartbreaking music. So I'm just like, I love it so much. And I wanted to just put it on the podcast.
There's so much out now.
Yes.
And one more thing. I had a baby 9 months ago and she has like 5,000, like not even like Indigenous books and like First Nations books from Canada specifically, because every time I go to Canada, I find like 10 more, and Cherokee books. Like, there's just a lot for like babies that was not around in the very recent past.
I love that. That's like an optimistic future.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of want to stay on the topic of identity for a moment, because throughout the novel, we kind of see Steph figuring out different parts of herself and where those different parts of herself fit in her family, where she fits in the Indigenous community, where her queerness fits into her life and her family. Even like her academic identity is something that she discovers and kind of figures out throughout the novel. And I'm really curious, when it comes to the writing process, like, how did you map out how Steph was going to change and develop as a character alongside the plot beats of the novel? Because like Steph at the beginning of the book is very much the same and also very much different as the book closes out.
Yes, it's a coming of age novel for sure. And I feel like there's a deeper answer to that. And then there's like a practical answer. So the deeper answer is that for sure, a coming of age novel, for sure, I wanted to see change. I've always loved coming of age narratives, particularly queer ones, because I think it's just like this, it's such an interesting space to not see yourself in the future, to not to grow up without examples of like of queer adulthood, or queer family building or queer anything like before you. So you don't really know like who you're going to be, because in Steph's case, that's something she was introduced to much later, having like straight parents. But I thought as I was growing up, because age 18, age 34, as I was writing this and as I was growing up, I thought that she was going to have everything figured out and that I was going to have everything figured out at like 21. And so I could only let that character age up to 21. So it was kind of a shorter arc. And then I got to 21 and was like, oh, oops. So I told myself like maybe 25, maybe 27. And I think it must have been around 28 or so. And Steph's character would have been around then, around that age, that I had this moment of like, my life has absolutely not gone in the direction that I thought it would. I've been so surprised, sometimes in good ways, but at that point, like very, very much in bad ways. And so kind of not recognizing myself and not fitting into that blueprint that I had made me understand that like, oh, this coming of age book, even though I've enjoyed coming of age novels that like help you understand yourself between the ages of like 16 and 18, that's not been my experience as a new adult. And that's not going to be Steph's experience. I don't think that's really anyone's real experience. Once I kind of accepted that and came to a point of celebrating that helped me step back and realize like these characters are going to be whatever age they're going to be when these plot points have happened to them, when this growth has happened to them. And it's not going to be just Steph and Kayla growing. We're going to have an arc like that for the mother as well, because at whatever point in life we are, hopefully I now think like we continue to change and to grow.
No, I love that. And I think we can all relate to that feeling at 21 of being like, oh, I'm going to know everything. Like, I'm so good. And just then you wake up like 10 years later and you're like, I knew nothing.
In terms of the practical piece of that, I think once I understood that, and then we were like pretty deep in like revision stage instead of writing stage in the same way, then it was all about like storyboarding and tracking, because even the less obvious parts of her identity, like when you were talking about her academic journey, or how she understood herself and her like academic identity. I loved how you said that. If I didn't have like little flashcards, all like laid out on the floor, on the wall to like remind me this is still part of who she is, then I might have let her sort of get away from that aspect of her identity, or if she is going to get away, like not be aware that she's getting away from it. So I think the characters didn't have to stay as like closely linked to different aspects of their identity throughout their lives. Like it's totally fine if you decide you don't care about science anymore, but on a craft level, like the author has to realize that that's happening so that they can make that a conscious choice in their revisions.
Well, and the book like switches POVs between the characters. So is that what you used as well to sort of tackle the writing of like keeping aligned on which story you were telling?
Yes, for sure. The storyboards would help me with so much, point of view included. But just to back up, I know we're talking to writers, but like for anyone who needs help visualizing this, I would take a section of the book or a chapter of the book. It really depends if it was like micro or macro. And I would lay out all of the scenes. If it's a scene or a thread or something that is like science focused, then it goes on a green little index card. If it's love focused, then pink. If it's Cherokee, then orange. Our flag is orange. So we have like, those are just 3 examples of different colors, but kind of balancing all of these different things. So those are laid out, let's say on the floor, just in chronological order of where they show up in the book or in the chapter. If I get like 20 index cards in and it's like green, 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 pink, green, 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 then when I'm thinking about how to plan the next round of revisions, that's my visual cue of this has turned into a chapter or a book that's only about science, with like one little moment of remembering romantic love. There's so much else that needs to be there. We haven't seen these Cherokee parts of the book that, let's say, were there pretty intentionally. They were very, very much part of her life for, like 20 index cards ago. And then we lost that thread in a way that we wouldn't intentionally lose it in a real person's life.
Okay, first of all, green is absolutely the correct color for science. Like anybody who argues with that is wrong.
They're wrong.
But when does the storyboarding come into your writing process? Is this something you do only in revisions, or do you have a very rough outline before you tackle even the first draft?
I love a messy first draft, but I also love revising early and often. The revision is for sure my favorite part. So I wouldn't storyboard before I'd written any words. But if I'd got just like one chapter in that I felt was like, there's something here, then I would step back and just see if the elements were balanced. That being said, I haven't had just one chapter of this book to do that with for many, many, many years. So I don't know if I would do it that way in the future. I think in the future for book 2, I would wait for sure until I had a full first draft of the novel. And then I would go back, because now it's so clear to me that like I can't balance elements of something if I don't know what the something is yet.
That makes sense. And it's also cool to see that your writing process is still evolving and you're still learning as you continue throughout your writing career.
I think the reason why it's evolved in that way in terms of storyboarding is because I started out at writing short stories. And so I think if you come from short story world, which many of us do, if we've taken any kind of creative writing class, I feel like that's so much the norm, then you get so much like comfort and so much confidence from like, maybe in this smaller space, I could really control a lot more, and I could really know this space, and I could take these like 16 pages and make sure that they're really balanced in a way that I love. This book came out of a short story where it was important to me to like know before I went any farther, do I really love this? Do I really think I have this like world set up in these however many small number of pages? But I didn't want to start it as a short story. I started as a short story because I was scared of writing a novel. Now that I've like done it once, I definitely don't think it would be helpful for me to start it as a short story. I think it would be helpful to me to start it like with the confidence of like, your first draft of your first chapter is going to be a huge mess, but like you have to just, because it's not a story and it's not trying to be a story, like you have to just keep going before you make yourself crazy with perfection.
But you can't revise something that isn't there, right?
Yes.
As the old adage goes.
I wanted to think that I could write like a few short stories that were like beautiful and then piece them together into a novel. And that did give me a start for this when I was just emotionally like not ready to tell myself I was writing a novel. But I think in my case, it overcomplicated things, because it is hard after the fact to stitch things together that like maybe don't want to be together.
Just switching gears slightly.
Yeah.
There was one element of the storytelling that you used that I really enjoyed in the novel, and I don't think it's something I've seen before, and that was the use of descriptive images. So instead of like, one of your characters loves Instagram and is a bit of an Instagrammer, and so to include the version of her life that she's letting the public see, you have included descriptions of the images rather than including images in the novel. And I'm really curious how you came up with this plot device.
I've been asked this before, because I don't think I've thought about why descriptive images. I know that there was one moment in like very, very last like copy edits era where I was asked if I wanted to put in emojis as like actual emojis, because we can do that these days, or if I wanted to keep the descriptors of emojis. And then I felt really strongly that I wanted to keep the descriptors of the emojis because I think they're hilarious. Like, it's funnier to see someone write out like spaghetti emoji than to like see a bowl of spaghetti. So that was a humor choice. In terms of why we have Instagram in this book at all, that comes from this like deeper theme of the book of characters who are trying to figure out their stories, to understand themselves in the context of their stories, and they're trying to figure out how to tell their stories. So what happens when you are figuring out your story and trying to tell your story kind of as a gift to someone else and a gift to yourself, and you realize that people think that they already know what that story is. We see that with Steph's girlfriend, Della, whose story was told in a really public way because she was made famous as a child. And we see that with Steph's sister, Kayla, because she's an Indigenous artist slash activist slash social media influencer. That's her job, is to be on Instagram. That really changed everything in terms of point of view in the book, and in terms of text messages and Instagram posts and all of these outside things that I wanted to include, that I decided at that point that I wanted to include. It comes from this place of being curious, all of these characters and myself for sure being interested in representation. If Kayla is just an artist, an artist alone, then when she's younger, she's not thinking too much about who's looking at her art. It's really just a space for her to kind of play and think about what's interesting to her. The more famous she gets, the more she becomes an Instagram influencer, the more pressure there is for her to represent Cherokee women, but actually to represent like all Indigenous women. That's like her niche online, is if you want to see a particular kind of like Native womanhood, then this is like a cool place to do it. And she is doing cool things, like artistic things, beautiful things. She's still an artist. I think her activism it comes from like a really, really important, deeply felt, like sincere place. But it's so paralyzing to interpret your own identity through the eyes of like the people who are looking at you and what kind of woman they expect to see. I don't think I would have been able to portray that as well, or think about it as deeply without the Instagram posts, because I wanted to see not just like how does Steph see her sister, who she really understands as like a full person in all her complexity. And I wanted a chance to see how would Kayla portray herself every opportunity she has to make those like micro decisions of like, this is what they want to see, and this is who I'm going to be for them.
Well, it was very effective. Like, I thought it was such an interesting way to, like, there's so much you can say in an Instagram caption, but I think including the description of like, okay, this is what Kayla's saying, but this is what she's showing people. I think that it was a really cool way to, like you said, show readers how Kayla is trying to portray herself.
And I think it's an art question as well, because we see the caption, not the captions. We see the replies. Oftentimes, those replies could be positive and they could be negative, but just knowing as an artist, whether you're like an artist online or an artist like as a writer, any way that someone could be like putting their work out there, there's like no more immediate or more obvious way to have that reaction right in your face than doing it online. And I'm in a place now talking to so many writers, especially debut writers, where that's really interesting to me to ask them, what was it like to be a writer like 6 months ago before your first book came out? What is it like to be a writer now after, let's say, even 500 people have read your first book? That's 500 opinions, even if they're not strong opinions, not bad opinions, like that's 500 opinions. How does that change the way you're going to think about your second book, or the way you're going to think about yourself as a writer going forward?
It's so interesting. I love all of the kind of, the thoughts that come from all of this piece. But I really enjoyed the like main character Steph dream, or like her dream of becoming an astronaut, because you gave me a glimpse into like, I've never actually thought like actually how does somebody become an astronaut? Shock horror. I don't think Ireland has that many astronauts. I should have Googled this before it came up. So not that aware of it, but the book follows her journey and really goes in depth into like the process and how somebody goes about doing this. And it felt really very accurate and real to the reader. I'm just curious about what the research process was for this, and like, what did that look like?
My research process for everything was learn as much as I can through like books or like YouTube video tours of like particular habitats that scientists use, like or through documentaries, like learn everything I can. And then don't get lost in the research. Like, make sure that I'm pretty quickly starting that first draft of the chapter, because I'm not going to learn everything there is to know about space exploration. And then ask for help. So again, hugely, this was a novel of collaboration. And for the science parts, I have a friend who is a biologist. My UK editor's father is an astrophysicist and a scuba diver, both of which like I really needed for this book. So that's when these people and a few others were like very, very gracious in agreeing to read the book and tell me the many, many places where I got things wrong. I also think that I found research in unexpected places, because if it's so much of part of your life for like a decade, then you're just learning things all the time. Like if you go visit a friend in a city and you're going to visit them anyway, then you think, oh, well, there's a space museum here, I might as well. Or I was on Reddit one night, and that's where I found someone posted a link to this statistic that we're more likely to have triplets than become astronauts. So it's just like these little things where your life just builds to include taking in information whenever you can about like these like subjects that otherwise would not have been a part of your life.
I love it. And the book is called To the Moon and Back. And I cannot resist this question of asking, if you could go to the moon, would you go?
Never. Absolutely not. No.
What about space? What about above the atmosphere?
Absolutely not. I would never, ever, ever go to space. I am terrified.
Okay, but because this book not only has space, it also has deep ocean.
Nope.
Both no. Hard nose on both.
Hard nose on both.
Yeah, you really captured like the scariest things that I think about.
Yeah, and we don't have to do them. I think one of the things that I really love about the characters in this book is it just made me think so much more in writing it. It made me think so much more about like, so when I was younger, I think high school is the time to sometimes think like, oh, I'm not like on the football team and like first chair violin and a brilliant writer. Like I wanted to be really good at everything. And in writing this book, I just now have such an appreciation. I'm not telling people to like stay in their lane, but I have more. I think it's very, very honorable now when people do what they can and what they're moved to do to improve the world and like prepare it for the next generation. I get really emotional thinking about scientists because as someone who did so poorly in science classes, I just think scientists, they dedicate their working lives to this huge contribution to like this group project of humanity. And that's a very moving thing. It's very much needed. I don't need to do it. And we don't all have to be scientists. Like whenever I meet anyone who's doing anything with their lives, which is all of us, I'm ready to kind of be so excited about the diversity of options that we have.
I also agree with you that I think it's like, I know somebody who specialized in bats.
Oh my God.
And like, that was their whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
amazing.
at bottom of the ocean. None of our business.
It's absolutely none of our business.
Absolutely none of our business. We don't need to know what's down there.
No,
we're good.
It's not our business. There's a character in the book who it is her business, but not mine. And I also think as the more PhD students you meet, the more you appreciate this concept. Because when I talk about my brother being a Cherokee historian, I don't think there's such thing as like a Cherokee historian who just like does all of Cherokee history in that way. Like he looks at, okay, forgive me if I get this wrong, Noah, but the political and economic history of Cherokee Nation's government from, I believe, 1865 to 1907. Everyone who's doing a PhD, like the title of their dissertation is something like that, because we need people to get really, really like in the weeds about like the book that they're working on for a decade, their fiction book or their book of poetry or like whatever little piece of like humanities knowledge like they're in charge of for now.
I wish I had like that, something like a parameter of that. You know, I'm in charge of books from here to here. It might be helpful sometimes, but this book was picked as a Reese's book club pick. So congrats about that. I'm just curious about what has that been like?
It's been amazing. It's been so great. So wildly, wildly unexpected. I found out, I think my daughter was like 4 weeks old. It was just like such a fog when exactly this happened, but I got a phone call and it was just the most wonderful, hardest to believe news. And the best part of it is just how I keep going back to this collaborative thing, but how many people it invites in, not just in terms of like, I'm very, very, very happy to meet readers whenever I can, but I didn't realize that there's a group chat of Reese's book club authors.
How do you sneak us into this group
it's
chat?
Incredible. Like just to have the month-long news of, you know, how incredibly generous that like they've chosen to have this book as part of their club. But then there's like the forever news of like any chance you get to like meet another reader or meet another writer is just like such a gift in this otherwise like pretty solitary writing life.
Man, that's so cool. I had no idea there was a group chat. Now, I know you've been very busy as of late. You have a new child. Before we started recording, you mentioned you had been to like 6 provinces in a number of months.
Yes.
So I'm hesitant to ask this, but
oh God, is this
what are you working on next?
What am I working on next? So book tour ends November 14th. So I have been on the road and I'm going to continue that until November 14th. And then I think everything changes because it's going to be going in some ways I'm thinking of it as going back to normal life, because there was a 2-year period before the book was out where like all I was doing was working on this book with the editors. I was a teacher for all the years before that. And then I was just working on this for 2 years. It also feels like it's going into like a whole new country that I like don't know anything about, because I'm definitely going to be working on a novel. I don't know what it's going to be about. I don't know how soon. I don't know anything about what it's like to write a second book, like with all of the knowledge that you have after having written the first one. And I don't know what it's going to be like to do that with a 1-year-old. So I feel really, really, really excited about it because I've loved book tour so much, and like writing a second book is the only thing that like I could love enough, like that writing process to be like ready to say goodbye to all these incredible experiences. And I feel like it's all unknown.
Well, I hope first on the list is like nap, just like a nice solid sleep.
Yes, I think I'm gonna go to a writers conference in February, and it's gonna be my first night by myself since the baby was born.
Well deserved at that point. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us. I feel like we could keep you here for the rest of the day, but we will let you go back to your little baby. Where can listeners find you online to learn more?
There's an Instagram account that's my name. It's at Eliana Ramage.
Great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time chatting with us today.
This was so wonderful. Thank you. I loved talking to you too.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you are interested in picking up Eliana's book, we will include links in our show notes. If you are enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us on socials. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. This episode was hosted by me, Rachel Wharton, and Tara Kremen, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and a huge thanks to Eliana Ramage for being our guest. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.